Are here. Got a great program lined up. We'll get started with the singing of the national anthem, led by Jerry Payton.
As soon as Rusty, you ready, Rusty? You guys know that I will say this. This will be the last time I'll make remarks before going directly into the national anthem. Rusty does not normally play before large groups. So if you can think of, ready? And I don't sing before large groups. Yeah, right. I'll sing.
Oh, say, and you see by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hail, and the twilight's fast gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. For the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
John Denise will deliver the invocation.
Please pray with me. Heavenly Father, thank you for the many blessings you have bestowed upon all of us in this room. Please help us to be mindful that all we have and all that we have achieved is by your grace alone. Please give us the wisdom to realize that if nothing else, the past year and its many challenges should keep us humble and help us recognize that none of us are in control or have all the answers. Lord, we pray that you will be with all of those who are suffering and in need, and that through faith they will find the strength to persevere and move forward. We especially want to lift up those who are close to this Rotary family who have suffered loss during the last year, whether it be the loss of loved ones or the losses as a result of the flooding that affected so many in our community. We ask that you comfort them and their families during their difficult times. Father, we pray that you will continue to guide and protect the heroic citizens who serve in all of our armed forces, who make tremendous sacrifices every day to protect the freedoms that all of us enjoy and yet too often take for granted. As we begin a new year and approach another peaceful transition of political power in this great nation, we ask your continued blessings on our country and pray that the new leaders to seek your guidance and be open to your will. Please help us focus on the things that unite us as a nation and as Rotarians, as opposed to the politics of divisiveness that have become so prevalent today. While we hear a lot from all the candidates about different plans for the government to solve problems, help us to be mindful that our country was built on the solid foundation of individual liberty and faith in you. We thank you for Rotary, whose ideal of service above self is a wonderful example of servant leadership and demonstrates to all of us and to the world what can be accomplished by individuals united by a shared vision to make this world a better place. Finally, we ask your continued blessings and pray that you strengthen and guide us to live our lives in a manner that will glorify you and bring you joy. Amen.
Thank you, John. You may be seated. As you sit down today, I'd like to ask that someone from each table hold up the blue bucket. And the reason I want to bring that to your attention today, that is the cart bucket, as many of you know. I would ask that you put money into that bucket. All the money that goes into that bucket is used to begin research and find a cure for Alzheimer's. So please support our initiative at Rotary and fund the cart bucket today. In fact, in December, we didn't contribute to cart, so we're a little bit behind. So I just want to remind you all today to put a few dollars in. Thanks so much. And I'll call forward Beth Irick, who will welcome our visitors.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and Happy New Year again. First of all, I'd like to say welcome, and we have one visiting Rotarian with us today, and if he would please stand, that's Jim Hudson. He's standing right there. Welcome, Jim. Do we have any other visiting Rotarians that I did not get your name. I need a helper. If somebody can help me with the microphone, that would be great. So all of those of you who brought a guest, if you would please stand, and we'll walk the microphone around so you can introduce your guest.
I'm Carrie Powers, and I have a guest today. This is Darren Gow. He's an Allstate agent in the Vista on Lady Street.
Hi, I'm Libby Gober, and I'm delighted to have as my guest today Mel Jenkins. Mel is a civic and environmental activist in particularly the Rosewood area, but for all of Columbia. Welcome, Mel.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Jordan, and I have with me John Wright, who is our disaster program manager for the American Red Cross. He's very busy. He's also a retired Army officer.
Good afternoon, I'm Chris Bailey, and my guest today is my son-in-law, one of them, from Adelaide, Australia, Daniel Moore. And Daniel is proof of the reason that God gives children to young people, because he flew here with my daughter and his wife and 3 young children. I guess it was about a 20-hour flight altogether, so with young children. So, but welcome, Dan.
I'm Carl Roberts, and very happy to have my son Brendan with me today. Brendan is in his 2nd year of grad school at Caltech in Pasadena, and getting a PhD in physics, and home on Christmas break until tomorrow. And let me say his undergraduate school is doing very well in football. I won't say who it is, but it's a school sort of northwest of here.
Did we get everybody? Thank you all. Have a great week.
Thank you, Beth. Great job, and welcome everyone. Wes Hickman is going to come forward and share this week's health and happiness report. And Wes is just returning from a 12-day trip to South America. So we look forward to hearing about that, Wes.
Thank you, Mark. So I did prepare many slides on the South American trip. It will only take about 30 minutes. Everybody just paid no. We'll skip that. Maybe that'll be for another time. Although I will say that in every major city we went in, our tour guides always drove us by the Rotary sculpture. Many of them had large Rotary sculptures in the middle of town with plaques signifying what their local charities were about. So that was a very interesting thing for me to engage with our guides as we went around Chile and Argentina. A couple of announcements. I'm going to get the most difficult one out of the way first. As most of you know, I work for the University of South Carolina, and I do need to make a note that this coming Monday, January 11th, there is a school in this state that's playing for the national championship in football, and it's not us. So it's the one up there in the Northwest. So congratulations to all the Clemson fans, and good luck. It's a great thing for our state. A couple of other good news announcements. Carrie Powers has been accepted to leadership Lexington County, so congratulations, Carrie. James Fleshman has been named the Affiliate of the Year for the Central Carolina Association of Realtors. And Jerry Smith, Jerry, where are you? Jerry got married this past Saturday, so congratulations. One other thing I wanted to note, we heard John talk a little bit about it this morning as he was offering thanks, and I know many of you probably saw the newspaper this morning, and there were a few neighborhoods that were cited about still being in the recovery, and as we all look to make the transition into 2016, I think it's important for us to all recognize that there are still people in our community and Rotarians like Jason Snyder who are still recovering from all of the things that have happened to us in 2015. So As we move forward into this next year, we all begin to make our resolutions and think about how we want to improve our personal lives, improve the community around us, and improve our state. Keep all those folks in mind that are still suffering from losses that they may have had in the past year. And I think it's especially important as we talk about health and happiness and moving forward into 2016, let's all really think about making health and happiness for us individually, our families, and our community a part of our New Year's resolutions. Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon.
Great job, Wes. You always do such a good job with health and happiness. Thank you. I'm excited to call forward past president Jim Reynolds. We will welcome new members today into our club. It's a great way to start 2016 with new members. Jim.
Thank you, President Mark. We're delighted to have 3 new members joining us today, and we'll ask them to come up with their sponsors and line up in front of the speaker's podium here so everybody get a good look at you, get to know you. First, we'd like to introduce Ryan Evans. Ryan, if you would step forward. Ryan is married to Morgan. They have 3 children, Gwen, Carter, and 1 on the way. So they're already counting number 3. Ryan is the Director of Operations for the Cason Group, a native of Florence, born in Florence, South Carolina, was educated at Columbia International University. His church affiliation is Christ Church of the Carolinas. And his hobbies include golf, hunting, home improvement projects, and in a few months, when number 3 comes, it's going to be all about children. So you might forget the golf for the next 15 years. Ryan's classification is insurance, and his sponsor is John Johnson. Please join me in welcoming Ryan to Columbia. Next, I want to welcome John Dando. John, if you'll step forward. John's married to Anna Claire. They have 4 children. And John is the owner of Crawl Space Medic. John was born in Lakeland, Florida, educated at NC State, attends First Presbyterian Church, and his hobby is listed as golf, but he told me that he hadn't seen a golf club in about 5 years now, with 4 children. His classification is home moisture protection. And John also told me with the floods that we talked about a minute ago, he has been just absolutely deluged with work and helping people get back in shape. And his sponsor today is Old Chetwood. Please join me in welcoming John to the Columbia Rotary Club. Our 3rd new member is Steve Millett. Steve, if you would step forward. Steve is married to Dawn, and they have 4 children. 3 are 18 years old. You heard that right. They're triplets, and they are all freshmen in college. So y'all be real nice to Steve. One is at USC, one's at College of Charleston, and one is at Wake Forest. And I don't know how Wofford missed out on that triumph. But there's hope, because Dawn and Steve's 4th child is 8 years old and is taking campus visits on request now. So Wofford crowd can make up for lost time. Steve is the general manager of Total Comfort Solutions, our commercial business here in the central part of the state. Born in St. Joe, Michigan, and moved here from Grand Rapids about 1.5 years ago. He was educated at Central Michigan University. His hobbies include boating, hiking, and golf. And his classification is commercial HVAC service. And his sponsor is Karen Black. Steve, welcome to the Columbia Rotary Club. And if you, after Steve gets pinned by Karen, ask our new members to turn around and face the podium. We want to welcome you to the Columbia Rotary Club. This is a wonderful club, service club, and that's what we're all about, is service above self. The primary goal is to interact with the people in this room to get to know all the service that is provided throughout the community and find where your particular niche is and your passion for that. We encourage you over the next 6 months to sit at a different table every week. You'll be amazed at the people you'll meet in this club. And that's the other principle of Rotary, is fellowship. And you'll make some of the best friends you'll have in Columbia in the Columbia Rotary Club. You'll also meet amazing people, and you'll find opportunities for service that fit something that you're probably interested in. In a couple of weeks, we're going to have a fireside chat. I'm not sure when the next one comes up, but you'll be notified of that and have a chance to meet with past presidents and learn more about our club and Rotary. And again, we welcome you to the fellowship and the service of the Columbia Rotary Club. Please join me in welcoming.
Great to have all of you. Thank you, Jim. We will now move forward in the meeting and have Roger Stroop come to the podium. He has a Rotary history moment for us. Many of you know our club turns 100 years old this year in November of 2016, so a lot to look forward to there, and we'll learn more and more about our history as we lead up to that exciting time. So, Roger.
Thank you, President Mark. Humor has always been an important part of the Columbia Rotary Club. I've not been able to really determine the first time health and happiness as we know it today started, but from the early records of the club, it's clear that an opportunity to learn about the health and accomplishment of other club members was a part of every meeting, and that humor was also included frequently. The earliest record I found that was humorous in our records occurred in 1920, when several club members were accused of undue exposure of person and were given paper hats to wear over their bald heads. This photograph from the 1950s has Bill Tuller on the left presenting a pair of boxer shorts to Rabbi Gruber. I have no idea what the occasion is. There's a description on the club. The other people in the photograph are Dave Ellison, who was president, Alex Alexander, and Charlie Mercer in there. When I first joined the club in 1979, John Boylston would periodically update us on the happenings of his hometown of Springfield, South Carolina. He would talk about extended family members and some of the local characters. Following that, Dean Du Bois, who I hope many of you still remember, kept us laughing with stories about his hometown of Lee Cay's Crossing, Mississippi. On one occasion, Candy Heath Sr. walked to the podium to present health and happiness wearing a clerical collar, and before he had said a word, the club erupted into a fit of laughter for about 2 minutes. Candy was known for his humor and his ability to tell jokes. He had the perfect timing in jokes. Speaking of clergy, when Dick Lincoln was president of the club, the health and happiness reporters had a field day with preacher jokes. And when Les Bates was president, we had a year filled with more lawyer jokes than usual. Judge Bates was always able to get a laugh, whether he was doing health and happiness or inducting new members. He had a unique ability to butcher even common names. During one memorable health and happiness report, Les pulled out his Palm Pilot, and for those who don't know what a Palm Pilot is, this is what it is. He said his staff said he had to have one of these because he would tie his calendar in his pocket to his calendar on his computer. He pulled it out, showed it to us, and said, "It is wonderful, it's very great." He said, "I use it to keep my Post-it notes."
Thanks, Roger. Love looking back and learning more about our club over these last 100 years. It's pretty neat. So thanks, Roger, for spearheading this and providing those updates. Before we move on to the program, I do have a couple of announcements. Our Christmas party in December was fantastic. It was. I want to thank you all for the the turnout. I think we had 125, maybe 150 people there. It was at the USC Alumni Center, or the My Carolina Alumni Center in the Vista. It was a fantastic venue. Robert Goings, Jesse Bullard, both worked hard to pull it together. It was a lot of fun. We had 4 sponsors: Hal Stevenson with Grace Outdoor, Jesse Bullard with Southern Way, Robert Goings with the Goings Law Firm, and my firm, Wells Fargo Advisors, who all pitched in to provide some funding to have that party. So it was a great time. Now at the party, we made a big announcement. John Bakis had the microphone. President-elect John Bakis had the microphone to let everyone that was there know that we have a president-elect. So the person that will now follow John Bakis, and this person will start in July of 2017. And I'm pleased to tell you all again today that it's Carrie Powers. We're thrilled that you've been elected by the board, Carrie. Look forward to your leadership, and thanks for all you do already for us. So we're very fortunate to have you in the club. Now transition to our program today. I'll call forward Bill Dukes to introduce our speaker, and remind you all that Bill, in addition to being a businessman and entrepreneur, is the civilian aide to the Secretary of the U.S. Army. Bill.
Well, good afternoon, and Happy New Year to everyone. In my role as the civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army, one of the most important pieces to that is to ensure that we build bridges between the local community and the Army community. And we have 3 significant components and pieces of the Army in South Carolina. One is the Army National Guard with Bob Livingston. The other is the 81st Reserve component at Fort Jackson. And the other is the active component, which is Fort Jackson and Army Central Command, which is located at Shaw Air Force Base. Many of our people in this state are not aware that Army Central Command is at Shaw Air Force Base. It is there as a result of the last BRAC, base realignment, and it shares the field with the Air Force, and Army Central Command is the Army component of the Central Command, and Dave Cochran is the G8 of Army Central Command, and he will be our speaker today. Dave is, or to put it into business, lingo, Dave is the CFO of Army Central Command, and his bank account is in excess of $8 billion. And he will tell you about how those funds are used in the Middle East. And I asked him if he would do us one favor, and that is to please try to keep it into business terms and to be careful about the military acronyms. So we'll see what happens here. We've got a little buzzer here, and if he gets off base, I'm going to buzz him and see if we can help out. But at this time, I'd like to introduce Brigadier General Dave Cochran.
Live up to that introduction and the nice applause there. Sir, thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for everything you do for the Army as the civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army for South Carolina. It's important that the Secretary's mission gets out, or his message gets out, and he depends on his civilian aides to do that, and Mr. Duke does an excellent job of doing that for us. Up front, I'd like to tell you that I am proud to be here. I am a proud South Carolinian. I was born in Columbia at Fort Jackson in 1958 in March, and 3 months later, the Army moved my dad to Berlin, and 54 years later, I came back to Columbia. I don't know why we waited 54 years. We have absolutely loved this assignment. We've been here for 3 years now. So I've been the G8 the money man for RCENT for 3 years. And I can tell you for the first 2 years, this was just an incredibly busy job. I thought it couldn't get any busier. And in June of 2014, ISIS, or Daesh, invaded Iraq, took over Mosul, and for the next year, we have just been running harder than we ever have. On behalf of Lieutenant General Garrett, the commander of U.S. RCENT, Command Sergeant Major Kelly, the Command Sergeant Major, I am excited to be here to bring the message forward to you. And if I can figure out how to work this. Video first. Oh, you want to do the video?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We've got a short 2-minute video. Do we have sound?
Yes, sir.
All right. So this will give you a short introduction to U.S. RCENT.
Partnerships with nations whose interests and viewpoints are merging into a common vision of freedom, stability, and prosperity. We are developing innovative, low-cost, and small-footprint approaches to achieve our security objectives, relying on exercises, rotational presence, and advisory capabilities, as well as bilateral and multilateral training exercises. These activities reinforce deterrence, help to build the capacity and competence of U.S. allied and partner forces for internal and external defense, strengthen alliance cohesion, and increase U.S. influence. We are also prepared to conduct humanitarian, disaster relief, and other operations. U.S. forces possess rapidly deployable capabilities, including airlift and sea lift, surveillance, medical evacuation and care, and communications that can be invaluable in supplementing relief agencies by extending aid to victims of natural or man-made disasters. 3rd Army RCENT stands ready to support these in every capacity.
All right. Okay. I think you see from your agenda that Dave Glazer, who is the Chief of Staff of RCENT, was supposed to be here today. Unfortunately, he had a death in the family. His mother-in-law passed away on Saturday, and he's going back up to Ohio to be with her, to be with his wife and family during this difficult time for them. Dave asked me if I would come and pitch to the Rotary Club, which I am very happy to do. And what I told him I would do is talk a little bit about RCENT and the fight that we've got, the current fight going on in Iraq and Syria against ISIS. And this is a briefing that I put together. This is a resource and perspective of what RCENT did with the fight against ISIS. RCENT has given up control of the Combined Joint Task Force, Operation Inherent Resolve. So this is a look back, and some of the slides we'll have show a historical perspective, and hopefully you can get a feeling for what we had to go through as we took up this very difficult fight. So this is the agenda that we'll go through, and as we go through it, we've got time for questions at the end, but if there's anything that needs clarification or if you've got any questions as we go through it, please stop me. So who is RCENT? Within RCENT, we have 3 hats. So I promised Mr. Dukes that I would keep this in layman's terms, so I'm going to walk you through this. RCENT is the Army Service Component for Central Command. So the world is divided up into combatant commands. The Central Command is in the Middle East, and as a combatant commander, they have a service component from each of the services. So the Army, Air Force, Navy, and Marines. RCENT is the Army component for Central Command. And under that, we have the Title 10 responsibilities to Central Command, commanded by an Army 4-star right now, General Austin, for all the support that they need in the Middle East. So as you see this is a historical perspective. General Odierno on the left, General Austin on the right. General Odierno was the Chief of Staff of the Army During the time that we were CJTF OIR, he has been replaced by General Milley. He's the Chief of Staff of the Army now. And in the middle, you'll see our most famous general, General George S. Patton. This is the lineage that we have for ARCENT as 3rd Army. If you look in the middle, you'll see the circle A, which designates ARCENT as the 3rd Army component. All right. This, excuse me just a second. As you look at what ARCENT does, we are the bridge between Central Command and Headquarters DA. We get the resourcing from Headquarters DA for the missions that Central Command gives us responsibility for. Excuse me just a second. The environment that CENTCOM has in the Middle East is complex and depicted by this that shows there are 4 conflicts, 3 confrontations, and 2 situations that we have to deal with. So the 4 conflicts, you can see we have terrorism, the Syria-Iraq conflict, Iran, and Afghanistan. Central Command is responsible for doing all of this, and the ARCENT Command does this for CENTCOM as we go forward. As you look and see, 3 confrontations, Sunni Shia, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and Pakistan and India. If you'll go to the ungoverned areas and perception of U.S. disengagements, these are the 2 situations that we take up. All right, so where do we do this? Within the Central Command area of responsibility in the Mideast, we have 4 named operations that are ongoing right now. If you look to the top, Inherent Resolve, this is what we're doing against ISIS in Iraq and Syria. Spartan Shield, this is in Kuwait. Freedom Sentinel is the ongoing operation in Afghanistan. And Resolute Support is also in Afghanistan. The ARCENT area that we have within CENTCOM is complex, and you can see that covers 20 countries, 4 time zones, with a population of 541 million. There are 49 ethnic groups, 60 languages are spoken, with 27 religions. The area that General Austin and General Garrett are responsible for keeping peace in, it's very, very complex, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to do all this. CENTCOM and ARCENT provide the balance and the stability to make sure that the operations that are ongoing in the central area are done completely and are resourced completely. So the mission of U.S. ARCENT. You can see here that our goal is to shape the U.S. central area of responsibility. In order to do that, we support operations against extremists, to assure access, build partner capacity, and develop relationships. So how do we do that? Again, I don't want to get into jargon, but we have lines of effort, and you can see the 5 lines of effort that we have here. Before ISIS came into being, our number 1 line of effort was to transition out of Afghanistan. So the transition out of Afghanistan, as we were conducting this, as many of you probably know, the president came in and slowed that transition down, due mostly because of the friction that was going on in Afghanistan. We need the forces there to make sure that the conditions are set so that we can do an orderly withdrawal, so that we don't get into a situation like we did in Iraq, where ISIS was able to come in and stand up and take over that territory. We set the theater. In order to set the theater, we have our forces forward. In Kuwait, we have all the forces from USRCENT that set the theater to enable follow-on forces to come. This happened when we did the operation against ISIS. We were able to bring in the forces that were required, to bring those in, set them, and have them set for success. In shaping the theater, one of the missions that Lieutenant General Garrett has is to go out throughout the 20 countries that we're responsible for, to do those key leader engagements, to make sure that we are interacting with the leaders of those nations, so that when conflict comes, if we need access or we need to go in and do conditions with those countries, we're able to do that. Unified land operations. The unified land operations we do in Afghanistan, currently doing in Iraq and in Syria, and then enhancing the force, the care of the soldiers, the families, the civilians that are all part of USRCENT. As you can see, these lines of effort. Now we'll get into kind of what I do. Resources run throughout that. Resources both in money and in our human resources, the personnel that are assigned to USRCENT. So the G8, we do the money. We are responsible for all of the resourcing for anything that goes on in the wars. This is our mission, and one of the things we do is we manage the $8 billion that the nation and you as taxpayers entrust to us to make sure that we're spending it in the right way, and that we are accounting for every dollar that we are entrusted with. One of the things we're doing right now is auditability. Congress has mandated that by FY17, DOD-wide will be auditable. We will have a clean opinion. We are working towards that diligently now. It is an extremely arduous task to make sure that not only the $8 billion that ARCENT has, but the billions and billions of dollars that the Army has is accounted for, and that a public accounting firm can come in and give a clean opinion to let you know as taxpayers that we are doing the right thing with the funding, and that we are good stewards of the resources that you would entrust us with. Just as ARCENT has lines of effort, the G8 has lines of effort. You can see these depicted here. At the top of that is obtaining the resources for the fight against ISIS. We'll show you in a subsequent chart here exactly how much money we have and the missions that we got with that funding, and the things that we were able to accomplish as we went through CJTF-OIR. And this is where we are. Obviously here in the Carolinas, we are at Shaw Air Force Base, co-located with the Air Force Central Command, the Air Force Service Component for Central Command. We have about 1,200 people that live and work at ARCENT, supporting the mission forward. As you go to the right, you'll see that we are in the Sinai. Within the footprint of Egypt, we have Task Force Sinai, that's part of the multi-force observers that take care of the Camp David Accord. They're the observers for that compliance between Egypt and Israel. Moving over to Kuwait, Camp Arif John in Kuwait City is where our forward headquarters is. Part of that forward headquarters, we do have the Combined Joint Task Force Operation and Resolve that's co-located with us there in Camp Arif John. I go down to Saudi Arabia, we have a small contingent that's in Saudi Arabia. And then in Afghanistan and Qatar, we've got our other forces. So how did we become CJTF-OIR? As I told you, in June of 2014, ISIS attacked and took the town of Mosul. Once that happened, in early June 2014, we were designated as a Joint Forces Land Component Command. Major General Petard, who was our Deputy Commanding General for Operations, went forward with about 60 people into the embassy of Baghdad, and he established that JFLIC headquarters forward to stop the progression of ISIS in the very beginning. As we progressed into September, we stood up a Coalition Forces Land Component Command, and this is where we got the coalition support, all of the other countries, France, Britain, Canada, Italy, and you can see the flags of the coalition that was formed for the fight against ISIS as we went forward. That happened in 17 September of 2014. As we progressed into October, the President determined that we needed a Combined Joint Task Force for Operation Inherent Resolve, and that was established on the 17th of October of 2014. Our CENT held that command until September of 2015, when 3 Corps out of Fort Hood was activated, sent forward, and became the command for CJTF-OIR, and they are still there today. The transition between what they will do and who will come behind them is still being determined right now, but the current thought on the fight against ISIS is that this is about a 3 to 5 year fight. So the CJTF will endure. Who will command that decision will be made as we get through the summer and get towards September of 2016 when the command will rotate out. So the resources we have. I told you in the beginning that we had about $8 billion, down from roughly $16 to $18 billion during the height of the wars between Afghanistan and Iraq. We have funding. We have base funding that is appropriated by Congress each year. And then we have open funding, overseas contingency operations. You might remember this, it used to be referred to as GWAT, Global War on Terrorism funding. And then we have special authority funding. The special authority funding is the funding that we use to train and equip the Iraqi security forces and the Syrian security forces as they fight against ISIS. So at the top, this is the RCENT funding that we have in the base. Then you see Operation Inherent Resolve. This is the funding that we use to support U.S. troops. And then in the middle, our special authority funding, this is the funding that we use to support the Iraq and Syrian forces as we train and equip them to get into the fight. And then at the bottom, we've got the funding that we use for Afghanistan. So within CJTF-OIR, as we started this fight, the first thing we did is we had an advise, assist, and accompany mission so that we went into Iraq, into Baghdad, and with the Iraqi security forces, we became their advisors. And the initial intent was that we would accompany them into the fight to help them in the things that they did. Very quickly that became politically untenable. So we have an advise, assist, and enable mission, about $144 million. This is the funding that we use to support just the U.S. troops that go forward. In the middle in the yellow, you'll see the Iraqi Training and Equipping Fund. Again, this is a special authority funding. 1.6 billion to equip the Iraqis with the equipment that they needed, whether it's rifles, vehicles, uniforms, whatever they needed to go forward and take the fight. And then the training, we had 162 million to train those forces to make sure that they're ready to do the things they need to do. On the far right, you'll see the new Syrian force training and equipment. This is the funding that we use to identify, train, and equip Syrian forces that we can take and put into Syria and fight so that we don't have the boots on the ground in the fight against ISIS. In FY16, that fight continues. You can see that the advise, assist, and enable is at 145 million. We're down to 878 million in the Iraq training and equipping, and then 600 million for the new Syrian forces effort that we have going on. The difference between the base and the OCO funding and the special authority funding that we have, base and OCO is a one-year fund, expires on the 30th of September when our fiscal year runs out. For the Iraqi training and equipping and the new Syrian forces training and equipping, it's a two-year fund. So it will go through 15 and 16, and in this case through 16 and 17. We've got 2 years in which we can use that fund to do the things we need to do to fight ISIS. This is the structure that we have set to do that. So this is CJ8. You can see that the different colors, this is a joint task force. So we have Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines that are part of this effort. So this is not a very big organization that we have with the amount of money that is entrusted to us, but we've got the skills and the expertise we need to make sure that we're doing the things that we need to do. So some things we learned from CJTF-OIR. I'll let you read through this, but the things that are important to us are the auditability, making sure that we have the funding that we need, and that we are able to account for all of that funding. So auditability and the oversight of the funding that we have and the uses that we have for it were very important to us, and things that we took forward that we will use as we continue this fight. The other is entitlement disparities. The entitlements that soldiers get while they're forward, it's different between where you are in, whether it's in Iraq, where actual conflict is going on, or in Kuwait, where it's a more permissive environment. But the disparities that entitlements have are important to soldiers. It's important to how the soldiers are perceived and how they perceive their mission is. So as we move forward in CJTF-OIR, we are looking at trying to smooth that out and get it into a better situation for the soldiers. So some things to remember about U.S. Arsenal. We are a forward deployed headquarters, and we have a CONUS here in South Carolina, main headquarters, that supports that forward deployed presence. We're the permanent headquarters that supports the Army forces in the U.S. CENTCOM AOR. We are responsible to headquarters TA and to CENTCOM to make sure the commission goes forward and that we are doing everything that the nation needs. We do have regional operations, and we are able to do crisis response just as we did in the situation we had with Iraq and the fight against ISIS. And we represent the Army equity for U.S. CENTCOM as CENTCOM brings the requirements forward to the Army. It is a complex mission. It is a very fulfilling mission. The opportunities that we have to support the nation and to support CENTCOM as we go into this fight against ISIS, we take it very seriously. And General Garrett is intent on making sure that we do everything that we need to do to make sure that we're successful in this fight. I think we've got some time for some questions if anybody, yes sir.
That slide, you said it was either 1.7, 1.8 billion dollars to train and equip the stand up the Iraqi army. Is that what you spent, or is that just what was budgeted?
That was what was budgeted on a 2-year basis. So we got access to, it was 1.6 billion for the training and equipping of the Iraqi security forces. And we have spent in the first year about 800 million of that. So we've got an additional 900 million that can be spent as we go forward, as we identify the requirements, as we identify the things that need to be purchased to support the Iraqis so that they can take that fight forward. As you've seen in the news lately, the Iraqi security forces just took over Ramadi. So they took back Ramadi. The next step is to go towards Mosul. And the fight in Ramadi was extremely difficult. As the Iraqis go forward into Mosul, it's going to be much, much more difficult. ISIS is extremely entrenched in Mosul. There's a lot of trenches, a lot of tunnels, a lot of IEDs. And as they go forward, they're going to have a lot of support as they go into that fight and try and take back Mosul.
But taking that over, on the news this morning, they were talking about most of that was done by the Air Force bombing the city into oblivion. The Iraqis had done very little of it.
So the bombing, the bombing is done by the coalition, so mostly U.S. Air Forces, but the coalition is bombing against that. But there is no way that you can take land just with a bombing campaign. So it's going to take boots on the ground. As the president said, preferably that is non-U.S. boots. But you've got to get in, you've got to actually put personnel on the ground so that you can get in, seize the territory, and root out the forces that are there, the ISIS forces that are there. Very, very tough fight in Ramadi. And as I said, as they go into Mosul, it's going to be much, much more difficult. Still supported by coalition air forces, but an extremely hard fight. Yes, sir.
You'll probably be retired, but could you put a price tag on what this will probably cost in the end?
Yes, sir. When we had the first Iraq, or we had Operation Iraqi Freedom, I was the comptroller for the Multinational Security Transition Command that was responsible for training and equipping the Iraqi security forces the first time. I hate to say that. We trained those forces, we equipped those forces, and we did that at a very substantial cost. At the time I was there for a year, my budget was $18 billion. Iraqi freedom, or the Iraqi campaign went on from 2003 until roughly 2011. So the cost there was substantial. As we go forward, we did the $1.6 billion in FY15, in FY16 another $715 million. I'm not sure that Congress or the American people have the appetite to continue to do that. I really see that slowing down. The Iraqis are going to have to step up at some point. We can help them only so much. We have gotten them the equipment that they need. We are giving them the training that they need. But it is really going to take the Iraqi people and the will of the Iraqis and the Syrians in order for this fight to succeed. You know, a price tag on it, it will definitely be in the billions. Time, 4 to 5 years, and you know, the cost in American lives, hopefully very, very low. You know, we're talking about putting special forces in, both into Syria and into Iraq. One of the things that you will hear, JTACs, Joint Tactical Air Controllers. So a JTAC, you know, as you look at the air campaign that's going on, an air campaign can only target so much if you don't have somebody that's controlling that on the ground. So we're looking at taking special operators so that they can go in and identify targets, laze targets, so that you put a laser on a target and a smart bomb can be guided in. That will help the effort. But again, that gets to the issue of expense and really gets to the issue of putting U.S. forces at harm or in harm's way. So, yes, sir.
When you talk about the cost of training, is that the cost of our personnel? Are we paying their personnel? Or what does that cost?
You know, the support for our forces, that's about $144 million that we're putting in, and then we've got another $162 million that we're using to support the Iraqi forces. So both, and that, you know, that cost doesn't include the cost of our salaries. So you know, you can add to that cost as you look and see what we're doing. But you know, the funding that we're putting in is pretty substantial.
What is Iraq putting into this?
You know, the Iraqis, they pay their own salaries. They provide some assistance to their forces. And there's things that we charge them for. Within the slides, you'll see something called an ACSA, an Acquisition Cross-Service Agreement. So we have an agreement with the Iraqis that we can provide support to them on a cost basis. So we'll charge the Iraqis for some things that we do. You know, it becomes a negotiation process to get them to pay, but we have the ability to charge them for some of the things that we do. But it is, you know, it's substantial. It's costly, but it is necessary. You know, as we try and root out this evil called ISIS.
General, thanks for being here. Thanks for the education, and we're grateful for your service and for what you're doing for our country. Thanks so much. Call on President-elect John Backus to give us an idea of what's coming up the next 2 weeks.
Good afternoon. Next week, we have a former member of our club, Dr. Brad Smith, a senior pastor at Eastminster Presbyterian Church, and he's going to talk about a project that he started at Spring Valley Presbyterian Church many years ago called the Super Bowl of Caring. It's a youth ministry to feed the hungry, and it started at that one church and has now grown to be a national program raising millions of dollars every year to feed the hungry. So he's going to come talk to us about that. And then the next week, we have our first presidential candidate, and I hope maybe we might be able to have one more, but Governor Martin O'Malley, a former governor of Maryland and Democratic primary candidate for the presidency, will be here with us on Martin Luther King Day. We ordinarily don't meet that day, but because we were able to find a speaker of this import, we thought it would be a good idea to have the meeting that day. So we hope that you will all come. Some of you may be on holiday that day, but we'll hope you'll come and bring guests. I hear he's a wonderful individual and a very interesting man. So I hope you'll come hear what he has to say. So those are the next few weeks.
Good, thanks so much, John. We're looking forward to that. Please stand and we'll sing.